Going live. Good morning, everybody. We are now starting chapter 25. We finished chapter 24 yesterday. There are 32 chapters here in this particular essay, and we are really in they're mostly short chapters, and we're in the final push here. I would like to finish this before I leave. So I'm leaving on Goyish date, July 19th. Thank you. So glad someone remembers.
July what?
19th. And I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to finish. That'll be very good. And it was mentioned to me by a distinguished Jew yesterday that in the Chabad publication that comes out is sent to people's inboxes on a daily basis that has or a weekly basis, sorry, Chayenu, on a weekly basis, and it has things to learn every day. I think that's the idea behind it. So it happens to be that for Chassidus, they're learning this, and of course, this is perfect timing because what we're trying to do here is to try to overcome Sinat Chinam, baseless hatred. So this could be Ahavat Yisrael, true love flowing from very profound humility, and that's what this is all about. And of course, this is the season because this Sunday is the fast of Shiva Sarba Tammuz, 17th of Tammuz, which starts the period of the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which so this year is actually on the 10th of Av, and the 17th of Tammuz is actually on the 18th of Tammuz. So that's all because things are falling out on Shabbat, and of course we don't observe these sad days on Shabbat, push it off by one day. By the way, I guess this has very little to do with the recording here, but if anybody has any questions about fasting issues, you speak to me. There's all kinds of medical issues. The Torah says, V'chai b'hem, the Torah wants you to live, right? So V'chai b'hem, that the law is there to live, to increase vitality, to increase joy of life, and God forbid that a mitzvah should result in diminishment of one's health. So speak to me if there's any issues. Now, I just want to tell you where we're going with this because it's so easy in any kind of sefer that you're learning, any kind of book that you're learning, that you get into a lot of detail, especially this. This is really very, very deep. It is amazing. This is just, I'm almost breathless. Of course, other people are asleep, but that's true. So I just want to give you a sense of where we're going because, why are we talking in so much detail about what is chokhmah, what is binah, etc. So I just want to give you sort of a little bit of an inkling of the forest through the trees, and that is that people are. I know this is not news. People are different, right? And it's hard to sometimes feel a commonality with someone who seems to be so different. And when there are disagreements about certain things, people fight over things, and sometimes people that are closer fight even more vociferously. So you'll sometimes see, sometimes among, let's say, certain Hasidic groups who they're all Hasidim, what's the problem here? We're all followers of the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov and the underlying Kabbalistic ideas, and Hasidic groups are fighting with each other. Sometimes it could be the same Hasidic group, but there's a splinter because the previous Rebbe died, and then there are two brothers or two cousins, and we just had a very interesting, those of you who were here for Shavuos. So in Tikkun Lo Shavuot, we had Reb Mordechai Gordon, who gave a beautiful talk. I really enjoyed it very, very much. What a sweet Jew, who talked about the whole history of Bobov and how nowadays in Brooklyn, there's, I don't remember the numbers anymore, but there's Bobov 42 and Bobov 50, whatever it is. I don't remember the numbers, but it has to do because there was a certain splinter, and it depends upon what street the group is, so it's 42nd Street versus 50th Street, whatever it is. So and there's there's tension, and why does that happen? So what we're trying to do, this is get the forest, is to try to get a sense how, in spite of the fact, if you remember from what we've been doing the past couple of days, that Chokhmah and Binah seem to be super different, that Chokhmah is this kind of grokking of something. It's the kind of a deep, intuitive understanding of something which goes, I could say, beyond or pre-analytical thinking. I was reminded yesterday, there's a famous essay that Rav Kook wrote, where he discussed the difference between a Navi and a Chacham, a sage and a prophet. Yeah. So prophets, generally speaking, except for Moshe Rabbeinu, but generally speaking, prophets tend to not sound like a Shulchan Aruch. They tend not to talk about like the precise details of halachas. They're talking about the big ideas, okay? Telling us to repent, etc. Whereas the Chachamim, right, the sages in the Talmud, it's actually somewhat unusual in the Gemara to talk about the big ideas, though there is that kind of material, especially in the Agadah, but much more detail. So what's the difference between the sages and the prophets? So it really fits this idea that if you're flowing from the Svirah of Chokhmah, that's a kind of a prophecy thing. Is that kind of this underlying big idea? And then the sages are tapping into the Binah realm, which is the analytical. And as we pointed out yesterday, and this was the point, that they're coming actually from different mazalot, from different cosmic forces, different divine cosmic forces. And we learned these two terms of Vinakeh, that's the attribute of Binah, right? That's the mazal Vinakeh, okay? And then Nitzur. That was the name of the mazal which produced Chokhmah. Okay, so the emphasis of yesterday was, wow, these are really separate things. These are like even coming from different mazalot. Okay, now Elishev, of course, is thinking 3 steps ahead, and of course, ultimately, they're not separate. By the way, I don't think I finished the thought from before. In the Chayenu, it happens to be learning this. I don't know if I actually said that. I said that. Thank you. Just keep an eye on me. Okay. Brain, mouth dysfunction. Okay. Sleep deprivation. Okay. I'm inspired by Larry. So it doesn't always come out right. So what we're trying to show is the irony, or maybe paradox is the better term here, that on the one hand, that these two elements are very different, coming even from different sources, different mazalot, right? Chokhmah and Binah. But what we're going to now begin discussing in much greater detail is how they're actually all one. So the greatness of this is that we're going to cultivate the ability. We're going to cultivate the ability that when we hear an idea that seems to not harmonize with the way we see things, or a person's personality that is very different than ours, and sometimes that can create a kind of a jarring experience, that to be able to see how, in spite of the fact that these two personalities or these two ways of looking at things seem to be coming from different mazalot, to use the Kabbalistic terminology here, Hasidic terminology here, but they're actually intertwined, interplaying with each other, and ultimately stem from a higher unit, which Elisha was told us about before, alluded to. And of course, we're going to discuss all these ideas. So let's now go into chapter 25 here. Chapter 25, we have the sources laying on the table there. V'zeu havein b'chokhmah v'chacham b'binah. This is what the Sefer Yetzirah, so we're quoting all the way back from a few chapters ago, that we quoted from this really ancient Kabbalistic source called Sefer Yetzirah, and we find this following just 4 words: Havein b'chokhmah v'chacham b'binah, that apply the faculty of binah through chokhmah and the faculty of chokhmah in binah, or to try to translate in English, analyze the intuitive and intuit the analytical. I'm not sure that that's the best translation, but okay. Now let's explain what that means. The havein b'chokhmah, what does it mean to analyze the intuitive? Hu inyan hitkalut habina b'chokhmah. It's the synthesis, the integration, the intermixing, the interplay of Binah within Chokhmah. What does that mean? It's that within Chokhmah itself is in fact also the capacity for Binah. Within the intuitive is in fact the seminal capacity for analytical. So that which is on the level of the intuitive can come to the level of analytical perception. Right? Of course, that's the normal kind of the way we think, right? You sort of get this intuitive grasp, and then you flesh it out. Then you analyze it. Then you give it dimension. Thank you. It's pretty good people are mind readers around here. That was good. You give it exactly what I was thinking. Dimension, width, breadth, height. That even though Chokhmah, in its essence, is nullification, absence of dimensionality, of being spread out, of expansiveness. That's why the Yud, which is Chokhmah, is just a dot. Nevertheless, that little dot can flow into Binah, the Hay of Hashem's name. The Chacham B'Binah. So what does Chacham B'Binah mean? The opposite, right? That it's the intuitive aspect of Binah. This is really a super interesting idea. Hu hitkalalut hachokhmah b'binah. This is the absorption or the inclusion of chokhmah and binah. He's going to explain what he means. V'hu agam shebinah hi b'chinat hitpashtut b'ribui pratim b'ribui svarim. That even though binah, the analytical capability, is the spreading out, the expansion of multiplicity of details and multiplicity of rationale, explanations, hesperim, explanations. But nevertheless, that there is in Chokhmah, this Chokhmah capacity exists so that it can make, we mentioned this before, meyeshayin. It can make out of something nothing, because right, the Hay is the something and the Yud is the nothing. So even though Yud flows into Hay, that seems to be the order, but Hay can flow back into a kind of a Yudness, if I can make a kind of verbal noun out of that, the Yudness. Let's just try to figure out what that could possibly mean. It's that perception can then be, in fact, all included in one point, in one dot. It's that essential dot, essential point in all of the analytical perception. It's actually the negation of all the details and explanations. It's that a person is grasping the essence of that intellectual idea. We'll explain this in a second. It's the very essence of the intellectual idea. But via how a person understood that through the multiplicity of details and explanations, as explained in detail in other places. Okay, we'll stop. Pause there for a second. Now I'll explain what this means. This is amazing. Are you okay over there? Mm-hmm. Okay. So,
trying to wake up.
Yeah. Okay. So, my Rebbe in yeshiva, he used to say, Rabbi Isai, our job is to make the simple complex and the complex simple. That would wake us up. Whoa, what do you mean? So our job is to make the simple complex, the complex simple. Okay, that's what this is. So let's talk about this. Normally, the way you begin something is on the intuitive flash of insight. That's Chokhmah, that's the Yud. Okay, but then you gotta bring it down. Okay, we're going to explain it in analytical terms. Right? It's very hard to communicate to somebody else. Intuition. Put it into words. Explain it to me.
I just knew.
right? If you say I just knew, that's not going to help somebody else, right? You have to be able to explain it. So explaining is bina. Okay. That's the details. That's the fleshing out. That's dimensionality, as Larry told us. However, there's a next step, and that is through all those details, you then bring it back to from those details, a kind of enriched essence of oneness of a simple dot again. There's a kind of rhythm of the simple dot expanded through an analysis, and that from that analysis take it back to the dot, and that second dot, interestingly enough, is actually a richer, more graspable, certainly, dot. Even though you've taken it back to its essence, it's an essence which you can hold on to more because it flowed from analysis. So the thought that comes to my mind as an example would be Albert Einstein. Okay, so I'm way beyond my expertise here, which is always convenient. Okay, so I'll just say something if anybody is a physicist here. So just go ahead and write me a note and tell me that I'm off my rocker. It's okay. Won't be the first time that someone's excused me of that. Accused me of that. Yeah, and that is the following. You know, you take a look at a theory in physics, and I've heard this from many. You know, I actually started out in college, as I think I mentioned, as this pretense to want to become a doctor. And then I decided that, no, I want to go for the money, decided to become a rabbi. So, you know, I took all these pre-med courses. And I remember talking this lecture about the discoverer of benzene, right? It's very good. Wow. You know, it's this ring of carbon. And so and with these double bonds between each carbon. In any case, it came to him in a dream of a snake biting its tail. In a dream of a snake biting its tail. And so, like, that's kind of a chokhmah thing. It's just like, it's just this kind of deep intuitive image. Snake biting its tail. So then you go to the chalkboard and you say, well, what could that possibly mean? And then you start working out, you know, all the details. Okay, what does that just intuitive image mean? And then you discover something that you can actually write in a scholarly journal that other people can understand, and you can try to prove it empirically, right? But there's the next stage. And just to go back to Albert Einstein for a second, who did not discover the molecular structure of benzene. He did other things, obviously. But, you know, I know that, again, I'm way beyond my limits here in terms of knowledge. But the Albert Einstein, I know towards the end of his career, was always looking for, I think they call it unified field theory, right? So there's this like insight, then you can imagine almost like the chalkboard in his office or his classroom, like all these mathematical notations covering the entire board, right? That's the Bina. And then towards the end of his career, I want to take this back to unified field theory. What's that? Let's now make it simple. But it's going to be simple, boiling it down to one essential grok, one essential intuitive theory, which somehow explains everything. So that's this rhythm of the simple, the complex, and then going forward, back, however you want to look at it, to the simple again. That's exactly what the Sefer Yetzirah means when it says, Havein bechokhmah, that take the chokhmah, which is the simple, Havein, bring it to the level of Bina, which is the complex, but then v'chacham b'bina, take the complex, and out of the complexity, out of the richness, out of the texture, bring it back to level of Bina. I'll give you perhaps another example, and then after that we'll have to stop. Perhaps in a more artistic realm of Bina, of music. So I can imagine that when Beethoven or whoever, a great composer, so there's a kind of a flash of an idea, right? There's some kind of inspiration. So that's chokhmah.
And then Beethoven, who I know it didn't just flow. I read a book once about Beethoven. You know, there's manuscripts, you know, change this note, that note, this note, that note, scratching all over, erasing, blah, blah, blah. So that's Binah. We're going to take that, like, that seminal flash of Chokhmah into Binah. And sometimes when you listen to a piece of music, it's very nice to have like an explanation. Someone will explain, here's the history of the piece. Look at the different versions and look at and analyze it like a notation on paper. But, you know, that increases your appreciation. But if when you listen to a piece of music, the only thing you think about is the mathematical precision of this piece of music and its history and all the different variations, you're going to miss out on enjoying the music. You got to somehow press the delete button and now just enjoy it in its holistic intuitiveness. And so that's another example of the chokhmah, the binah, and then going into the chokhmah. Or Sefer Yetzirah says, "Havein b'chokhmah." Take the chokhmah, translate into binah, but then chacham b'binah. Take the binah and then flow it back into or forward into the intuitive level. Okay, we'll pause on that note. We'll continue. Bezrat Hashem.